And President Trump announcing a 30-day pause on his tariffs on Canada and Mexico, this hours before they were set to go into effect. In return, the two countries will now be sending more money and personnel to help stop the flow of fentanyl into the United States. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao brings us more.
After securing a similar deal with Mexico, President Trump says he's also gotten Canada to cooperate. President Trump announced that he's issuing a 30-day pause of his imminent 25% tariff on most Canadian goods. In exchange, the Canadian Prime Minister says Canada will invest heavily in border security, including new choppers, technology, and personnel for border. Justin Trudeau says he'll have nearly 10,000 frontline personnel working to protect the border, appoint a new fentanyl czar, list cartels as terrorists, launch a Canada-U.S. Joint Strike Force to combat organized crime, fentanyl, and money laundering, and signed a new intel directive to fight organized crime and fentanyl, backing it with $200 million. It comes after Trump on Monday held two calls with Prime Minister Trudeau. While Trump says he's pleased with the initial outcome, he says he still has to see if a final economic deal can be struck with Canada. And earlier today, Trump again said that he wanted Canada to be a 51st state.
What I'd like to see, Canada become our 51st state. We give them protections. We don't need them for the cars. We don't need them for lumber. We don't need them for anything. If people wanted to play the game right, it would be 100% certain that they'd become a state.
And earlier today, President Trump also announced a similar deal with the Mexican leader. He will pause his tariffs on Mexican goods for 25% as well. Now for 30 days, it will not go into effect. And in exchange, Mexico will place 10,000 National Guard troops at its border to help stop the flow of fentanyl into the U.S. Meanwhile, Trump also mentioned that these tariffs are still on the table as the two sides continue to negotiate over the month-long period. Trump has also announced a 10% tariffs on Chinese goods, and so far the two sides have not struck a deal to pause that. And President Trump says he will talk with the Chinese regime leader very soon. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
President Trump today signing an executive order creating a sovereign wealth fund, fulfilling yet another promise he made on the 2024 campaign trail. It's an investment fund owned and administered by the United States government, the first of its kind in the United States. Back on the campaign trail, Trump said he would make the United States rich with tariffs and other, quote, intelligent things, while he said it'd be used to invest in infrastructure like highways and airports. Trump also floated the idea of using this fund to partially own TikTok. The Department of Government Efficiency has called on NPR and PBS to testify before Congress. A House subcommittee is alleging that the two news outlets have pushed biased coverage despite receiving taxpayer dollars as part of their funding. NTD correspondent Jason Blair has the story.
A Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, subcommittee is calling on the CEOs of NPR and PBS to testify. The subcommittee chair, Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene, says that NPR and PBS receive tax dollars to stay on the air, and their coverage should serve every single American, not just a narrow slice of like-minded individuals and ideological interest groups. The official notices to the federally funded TV and radio organizations say that the subcommittee seeks to better understand NPR and PBS's, quote, position on providing Americans with accurate information. The hearings are proposed to be sometime during the first or fourth week in March. So far, neither CEO has responded to the calls. DOGE, which is headed by Elon Musk, is tasked with increasing efficiency with taxpayer money, reducing waste, and streamlining federal government operations. Last week, DOGE said that it canceled 104 DEI-related contracts across multiple federal agencies, saving over $1 billion. Recently, DOGE has been reviewing USAID. The Foreign Aid and Development Agency's website went dark over the weekend. Musk said earlier Monday that he spoke with President Trump and said USAID will be shut down.
What we have here is not an apple with a worm in it, but we have actually just a bowl of worms. If you've got an apple and it's got a worm in it, maybe you can take the worm out. But if you've got actually just a ball of worms, it's hopeless.
Trump told reporters on Sunday that USAID has a radical agenda. And White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said that Musk is a special government employee. She said, "I can also confirm that he has abided by all applicable federal laws." Some Democrats are expressing concern over Musk and Doge, alleging that the department has acted illegally, and also raising national security concerns since Doge has been granted access to sensitive Treasury systems.
Elon Musk, you may have illegally seized power over the financial payment systems of the United States Department of Treasury, but you don't control the money of the American people. The United States Congress does that.
Musk and his band of unelected acolytes at Doge have locked out USAID employees from their offices, improperly accessed highly classified information, purged the agency of its nonpartisan leadership, and thrown the agency into chaos.
Reporting in Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt highlighting some USAID spending, which she calls wasteful. Here's what she said to reporters earlier.
$1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru.
The White House says that American taxpayers do not want their money going to such initiatives. Meanwhile, congressional Democrats called Trump's USAID funding freeze illegal, asking for accountability from the Department of Government Efficiency. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez brings us more.
House and Senate Democrats held a press conference outside the United States Agency for International Development in rejection of what they see as an illegal action from the executive.
Elon Musk, you may have illegally seized power over the financial payment systems of the United States Department of Treasury, but you don't control the money of the American people. The United States Congress does that.
Congresswoman Ilhan Omar reflected on how USAID helped her and her family.
I lived in a refugee camp for 4 years as a child surviving civil war. It is the essential programs that USAID provided that kept my family and I fed and safe.
House and Senate Democrats attempted to enter the headquarters of the United States Agency for International Development, headquarters that were closed Monday morning.
I'm the acting director of USAID. I've delegated that authority to someone, but I stay in touch with him. And again, our goal was to go in and align our foreign aid to the national interest. But if you go to mission after mission and embassy after embassy around the world, you will often find that in many cases, USAID is involved in programs that run counter to what we're trying to do in our national strategy with that country or with that region.
The United States Agency for International Development has a budget of over $40 billion for fiscal year 2024, and it was Donald Trump's campaign promise to reduce government spending.
I said very clearly during my confirmation hearing that every dollar we spend and every program we fund, that will be aligned with the national interest of the United States. And USAID has a history of sort of ignoring that and deciding that there's somehow a global charity separate from the national interest. These are taxpayer dollars. And so far, a lot of the people that work at USAID have just simply refused to cooperate.
Senate Democrats have vowed to stall the confirmation process of President Trump's nominees in order to put pressure on the executive to reverse President Trump's actions against the United States Agency for International Development. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
And a bipartisan bill called the Restoring Trade Fairness Act aims to revoke China's permanent normal trade relations. This follows President Trump's executive order directing his cabinet to address trade between the United States and China. Earlier, I had a chance to sit down with the bill's sponsor, Republican Congressman John Molinar of Michigan. He's the chairman of the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party. Chairman John Molinar, thank you so much for sitting down.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you back. Chairman, you recently introduced something called the Restoring Trade Fairness Act to revoke China's permanent normal trade relations status. What specific trade practices or policies from China do you see as the most harmful to American businesses and workers?
Well, first of all, just to revoke something that's not normal, and their trading relationship relies on overcapacity, subsidizing, stealing intellectual property, all sorts of violations from normal trading relationships. So it's only fitting that we reset that trade relationship to make sure it's fair to the American people.
And, you know, when it comes to economic strategy, if you will, how does your committee plan to ensure that revoking China's PNTR for short status will benefit U.S. manufacturing without escalating trade tensions or harming American consumers?
Well, clearly, China will retaliate. But what we realize is that we need to have very high tariffs. And what we propose is 100% tariffs on these strategic sectors. And you think of advanced batteries or semiconductors, some of these important technology areas where they are trying to catch up to us. And we want to make sure we restrict that and invest in that here in our country. Because many of these applications are used for military purposes and could be used actually against our own people. We propose a lower tariff rate for some of the less strategic kinds of goods. So they will retaliate, but they have a lot more to lose by losing the American market. And we just have to make sure that we stay ahead in the technology game, because ultimately they are being more threatening militarily, economically, not playing by the rules in any sense. And we need to react to that and right size and make that relationship a reset.
You really have your work cut out for you being in charge of this committee, because when you put things into perspective, the threat from the Chinese Communist Party is far greater than their military threat. When it comes to asymmetric warfare, basically non-kinetic, when they're trying to cause all kinds of disruptions within our society and destabilizing our society through infiltration in different means, how concerning is some of this more transnational repression and things they're doing to destabilize our society?
Well, one thing is, in this DeepSeek AI technology, they will suppress any negative information about the Chinese Communist Party. So all the atrocities, all the oppression that they've had in their own people, they will not allow that. So you're seeing a vast censorship, and that's the control of the Chinese Communist Party. And when you can see the hacking that they've done, both in our infrastructure as well as our telecommunications, these are threats that are aggressive in nature and compromise our systems, and it's something that we need to be aware of and respond accordingly.
If you could, unpack some of these hacks. There's one called Salt Typhoon, another one that has recently happened.
Sure.
How widespread is this?
Well, what we know of is Salt Typhoon was more on the telecommunications. Volt Typhoon was in our strategic infrastructure. Basically, if you think of that concept of a sleeper cell, something that can be switched at any time to disrupt our way of life. And that was embedded in our infrastructure in different areas, and they're continuing to do that in a way that if they were ever to do something, invade Taiwan, for instance, they could disrupt our daily lives so that Americans would turn on each other and feel threatened.
Now, with regard to competitiveness, strengthening American industries is a key part of competing with China. What are your committee's priorities in fostering innovation, particularly in sectors like semiconductors and renewable energy?
Well, again, we want to have tariffs to prevent them from dumping into our markets. We want to make sure that we invest in our own technologies. But we also want to make sure we're leading in some of these areas and have both export controls so that they aren't getting the most advanced chips, and also cut off some of these investments. When you think of the outbound investment that's going into China right now by American dollars, and sometimes it's taxpayer dollars, going to fund Chinese entities that partner with the Chinese military, that needs to end.
Chairman John Molinar, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And moments ago, the Senate voting to confirm Christopher Wright as Secretary of Energy. The final vote count was 59 to 38. This makes Wright the 9th Trump cabinet member to be confirmed. The Senate also advancing a vote for Pam Bondi as Attorney General, and another procedural vote for Russell Vogt, nominee for the Director of Office of Management and Budget. Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.